Number 11. George W. Bush had more spirit than any other U.S. president. Back in his teenage years, before he ran our democracy, President Bush was the leader of his prep school's cheerocracy. He was the head cheerleader at the Phillips Academy in 1963. Having this background in dance is probably how he was able to look so natural participating in those West African tribal dance rituals. Also probably helped him to be so skilled at dodging shoes that were thrown at him by Iraqi journalists. Number 10. Next up is Bill Clinton. So obviously we may wander into the arena of not safe for work. It's probably best to put the kids to bed and the headphones in for this one. According to a Secret Service officer, Bill Clinton juggled at least 3 affairs during his time in the White House. Of course, there was Monica Lewinsky, whose oral activity in the Oval Office produced a shot that was heard around the world. In addition to Monica Lewinsky, there was Eleanor Mondale, who was the daughter of the former Vice President, Walter Mondale. In his book, Crisis of Character, Gary Byrne, another Secret Service officer, claims that Clinton gave Mondale his own Secret Service in the Oval Office. Third on the list was an unnamed receptionist. According to the Secret Service officer, quote, "I stood guard, a pistol at my hip, outside the Oval Office, the last barrier before anyone saw." End quote. Another example of his scandalous habits is that he used to roll around with Jeffrey Epstein. Before Epstein killed himself, Clinton was racking up frequent flyer miles on his private jet, which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. Clinton also vacationed on Epstein's private sex island several times. After all his womanizing, we think it's appropriate to rename the Washington Monument after Clinton. Number 9. If Abe Lincoln was around today, he might be throwing haymakers in the octagon with Conor McGregor. At 6'4", Lincoln was blessed with crazy long limbs and explosive power. Before he was the 16th president, Lincoln was a legendary wrestler. He was defeated only 1 time in approximately 300 matches. And it's reported that Honest Abe was a bit of a trash talker. "I will emancipate your teeth from your face." According to Carl Sandburg's biography of Lincoln, he once called out an entire crowd of spectators. After defeating his opponent, he yelled out, quote, "I'm the big buck of this lick. If any of you want to try it, come on and wet your horns." End quote. There were no takers. You just don't get that type of colorful imagery in today's trash talk. I blame social media. Lincoln's success on the mat earned him an outstanding American honor in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Another wild fact about Lincoln is that on April 14th, 1865, he signed legislation which created the U.S. Secret Service. Maybe the best real-world example of too little, too late, because that very evening, he took his wife, Mary Todd, to the theater. It was the last show that Lincoln would ever see. And we can't help but wonder what would have happened if the Secret Service had been created a few months earlier. Oh, didn't see you there. Hope you're liking the video. If you haven't already, I have an idea. Why don't you hit that subscribe button? Because that way you'll never miss any of our newest content, and it actually really helps the channel. You're great. Number 8. There was nothing that could stop John F. Kennedy from fighting fascism. JFK had health issues throughout his life. In the lead up to World War II, he tried to enlist in the military. Because of his medical condition, he couldn't pass the physical exam. Not about to let something like a little chronic back pain keep him away from fighting for the country, Kennedy used the influence and wealth of his father to sneak his way into the armed services. His dad persuaded friends in the military to accept a certificate of good health, a false one, from a family doctor. His wealthy family connections got Kennedy into the Navy. These days, if rich parents are pulling strings for their kids, it's to get them into USC. Kennedy went on to become a war hero. In 1943, he was the officer of a patrol boat that came under fire near the Solomon Islands. The boat sank, and Kennedy and the crew had to swim 3.5 miles to a nearby island where they were then stranded for 7 days. And then later that year, on August 22nd, Kennedy was wounded in action. He's the only US president to have been awarded the Purple Heart. Number 7. If you think Russians are bad, you should try aliens. Even in the darkest hours of the Cold War, Ronald Reagan and the Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev had their priorities straight. During the 1985 Geneva Summit, Reagan and Gorbachev took a break from negotiations to take a walk. Only their private interpreters were present, and for years, the details of what the two leaders discussed were kept secret from both the American and the Russian public. But in 2009, Gorbachev spilled the beans. Reagan asked him point blank if Russia would have America's back if aliens invaded the planet. Gorbachev vowed that Russia would stand with the US if some aliens decided to roll up on planet Earth. It's too bad there wasn't like a mini alien invasion back in the 80s. As we all know, there's nothing like a little existential crisis to really bring the species together. Number 6. George H.W. Bush was an adrenaline junkie. To celebrate his 80th, 85th, and 90th birthdays, Bush Sr. would jump out of an airplane. Assisted by ex-military jumpers, Bush would free fall from 12,000 feet. Apparently, he wasn't nervous at all when dropping from the plane. It was pretty familiar territory for Bush Sr. I mean, after all those years of dropping in the polls. No matter what your politics, we can all agree that jumping from an airplane at 90 years old is awesome. Pop quiz, hotshot! According to the International Monetary Fund, the US dollar is the most popular currency in the world. Most of these bills feature the faces of US presidents. But there are currently 2 faces on our paper bills that don't belong to former presidents. Can you guess which 2 non-presidents made it on to the US bills? See if you can put the correct answer in the comments below, and stay tuned till later on in the video to see if you're right. Number 5. It's been partially swept under the rug, but there's a creepy side to Thomas Jefferson's life. Sally Hemings was a young African-American girl who was forced to serve Jefferson's oldest daughter, Martha. When Jefferson was sent as an American diplomat to Paris in 1787, he took his daughter and the 13-year-old Sally Hemings with him. Critics claim that while in Paris, Jefferson began a sexual relationship with Hemings, who, by the way, was nearly 30 years younger than him. Now, the Declaration of Independence is fantastic, but that is creepy. The charge is that these secret relations with Jefferson produced some of Sally's children. This has been a controversy that's lasted centuries. However, the results of DNA tests conducted by a team of geneticists in 1998 found that Jefferson's DNA matches the descendants of Sally Hemings. After publishing their findings, the team said, quote, "The simplest and most probable conclusion was that Thomas Jefferson had fathered Eston Hemings." End quote. Eston was Sally's son, and the Monticello Foundation commissioned its own study in 2001, and they came up with the same unbecoming conclusion. Oh snap! I just said the word of the day, unbecoming. Unbecoming means not fitting with the standards appropriate to one's position or condition in life. Good synonyms are inappropriate and unsuitable. See if you can use unbecoming in a sentence in the comment section below, and we'll feature the person with the most creative phrase in our next video. And big shout out to DJ Panabuef. With loquacious as the word of the day, she wrote, "My 2.5-year-old granddaughter has become loquacious and her vocabulary grows daily." Number 4. Lyndon B. Johnson was obsessed with his manhood. In her new book, The Residence: Inside the Private World of the White House, Kate Anderson reveals that LBJ was dead set on having his White House staffers outfit the presidential shower with a nozzle that pointed directly at his member. Apparently, he wanted the water to come out with the force of a fire hose. When his staffers pointed out that outfitting a new nozzle would require an obscene amount of plumbing work, he responded saying, quote, "If I can move 10,000 troops in a day, you can certainly fix the bathroom the way I want it," end quote. And on top of that, it's been reported that if a colleague came into a Capitol bathroom while he was still going number 1, that he'd sometimes swing around, still holding his Johnson, and shout out, quote, "Have you ever seen anything as big as this?" End quote. Then he'd seamlessly transition into discussing some pending legislation. This guy would not survive in 2020. Number 3. George Washington had horrible teeth. The legend is that he had wooden teeth, but that's false. Some of his fake teeth did turn brown and grainy over time, so they looked like they were wood. But back then, dentists almost never made wooden dentures. Throughout his life, he was plagued with dental problems. At the time of his inauguration, Washington only had one of his original teeth still in his mouth. His teeth were always a source of embarrassment. He tried all sorts of contraptions, trying to find reliable dentures, but unfortunately, there just weren't any good options back then. Over his life, he had dentures made of rare hippopotamus ivory, gold, lead, and even human teeth. Number 2. Would you believe me if I told you that one of our presidents was an avid skinny dipper? John Quincy Adams was like a frat boy during Pledge Week, because while he was president, as long as it was nice outside, he'd walk over to the Potomac every morning and take a swim in his birthday suit. One time, the tide from the river washed away his clothes. He had to hang dong all the way back to the White House. It's answer time. Currently, the 2 people featured on U.S. paper bills who never served as president are Alexander Hamilton, who was the first Secretary of State. He's on the $10 bill. And the second is the founding father / inventor / ambassador to France, Benjamin Franklin. He's on the 100, which of course is why it's all about the Benjamins, baby. Number 1. Coming in at number 1, we have Warren G. Harding. Harding was the 29th president, but he only served 2 years because he passed away in office due to cardiac arrest in 1923. But during his short time as president, he became known for a few passions, including poker. Harding was skilled at poker, but even the best players lose big from time to time. During one high-stakes hand, Harding gambled away the entire set of White House china, which dated back all the way to the presidency of Benjamin Harrison. Maybe it's a good thing that he didn't go on to serve 2 terms. The entire White House could have been lost on a pair of 2s. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you'll love the one we did on history's strangest kings. You can find that right here. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. And check back soon for a new video. Bye.